The chief of police in Detroit, Michigan, James Craig, says that legal gun ownership can help deter crime. And it seems that the stats are proving the chief right. In 2014, Detroit Police Department issued just over 1,100 handgun permits, while 8,100 guns were registered. And as that gun registration grows, homicides, shootings, robberies, all going down. Coincidence or something else? Chief Craig joins us right now live from Detroit. Chief, why did you feel you should go out and tell people in Detroit that they should pack heat?
Well, you know, it was based on a number of things. You know, I had a lot of experience working in other cities. Certainly, you know, my time in Maine was a pivotal part for my taking another look at the effect of what good Americans who are armed can have on reducing violence. You know, the state of Maine has a model, the way life should be. And so when I arrived in Detroit in 2013, and, you know, in Detroit in 2012, we had a lot of homicides. Certainly 2,300 permits were issued in 2012. Detroiters were fed up. It was during that time also they had no confidence or very little confidence in the police department. Right. So when I arrived a year later, you know, certainly the men and women in the police department started working real hard. The community spoke out and said, you know, we've had enough.
That's right.
The permits. And folks said, you know what, when I'm faced with an imminent threat to my life, I'm going to respond. The criminals knew that.
Yeah, right. And speaking to the criminals knew that, tell us the results of a survey where they talked to 1,800 felons. And the number one thing the felons were afraid of was
armed citizens. This was a research conducted by Wright and Rossi, and they said 57%, over half of those they interviewed, felons, said they were most fearful of an armed citizen than they were of police.
Absolutely.
And so that's based on research. But then when we look at our stats this year, while, you know, citizen shootings are down over half, you know, but also we're a safer city. Overall, our crime is down 12% this year.
Chief, ultimately, Detroit is the opposite of a gun-free zone, because if there are bad guys and they're looking to rob somebody, you don't know if the person you're about to rob is carrying a gun legally.
You don't know. In fact, I reported out right after, what I found strange once I was appointed as chief here in Detroit, the number of criminals that were checking to see whether or not a victim was armed. In fact, some of the criminals were even wearing body armor. Oh, man. I found that very different than places I work. So the criminals knew, or at least suspected, that they were going to be confronting someone that was armed. And then after a few shooting incidents, certainly some home invasions. I mean, we're sitting on a 17% reduction in home invasions year to date.
That's unbelievable.
And even last year we ended it was 38%. So, again, not to take away from the great work that our police officers are doing, because they are doing tremendous work. But also, Detroiters have said we've had enough, and when faced with an imminent threat, we will respond.
And that is obviously clear from the stats. Chief Craig, thank you very much for joining us live from Detroit. You got your hands full. It sounds like you're doing a great job out there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com.